Prince William was only moments away from addressing the nation when his expression suddenly changed. Beyond the prepared cameras, seated where no unexpected guest should have been, was a woman known inside palace circles as one of Queen Camilla's closest and most fiercely loyal friends. William did not hesitate. He stepped away from the podium, ordered the press conference cancelled, and disappeared behind closed doors, leaving journalists stunned, and the monarchy facing a question no official statement could immediately answer. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William had planned to use the press conference to announce a restructuring of royal charitable operations. The proposal would tighten financial oversight and control private access to senior working royals, the family members who perform formal duties for the crown. That mattered because the changes would affect his office and people connected to Camilla's social circle. Every journalist, photographer, advisor, and guest had passed through a reviewed security list. The future king had insisted on a restricted audience because one unexpected presence could expose the plan beforehand. Then he saw Lady Helena Marwood. Helena sat behind the second row, even though her name appeared nowhere on the approved list. William stopped before reaching the podium and turned to his private secretary. "Cancel it. No statement today," he said. The prince walked away, leaving Catherine to watch his face harden with alarm. She moved toward her husband, but he raised one hand. The gesture warned that someone had entered a space he believed was secure. Camilla received the news and reacted with disbelief. The queen consort demanded to know why her friend's presence had caused such an extreme response. Her frustration became fear when the aide refused to explain what William had seen. Helena was a trusted link to Camilla's private world, and her appearance placed that network under suspicion. A security officer confirmed the detail that changed everything. Helena had not entered through the main guest entrance. Her identification had been accepted at a secondary access point reserved for senior household staff and personally cleared visitors. Behind the press hall, William removed his prepared speech, placed it face down on the table, and stared at the sealed visitor log. Catherine stood opposite him as an aide opened it. One name appeared on the authorization line. No one there understood yet how the breach would cut through the family, or whose trust it would destroy. William sat down without speaking. Behind palace doors, the deeper crisis was no longer about a press conference. It was about three people whose private loyalties had suddenly collided. To the public, the cancellation looked sudden. To William, Camilla, and Helena, it was the explosion of a conflict that had been quietly forming for months. Each of them entered the crisis, carrying a different fear. William feared manipulation inside his future court. Camilla feared losing the private network that had protected her for years. Helena feared that a promise made in confidence was about to be exposed, and that she had been sent into the press room as part of someone else's plan. William had become fiercely protective of the boundaries around his household. Several private discussions involving Catherine and their children had reached people who were never meant to hear them, and every leak had made the prince more suspicious. His household meant the staff, advisors, and private office responsible for supporting his official work and family duties. Protecting that circle mattered, because one careless conversation could expose his plans, weaken Catherine's privacy, or place their children at the center of another palace struggle. Camilla saw the situation very differently. For decades, she had relied on Lady Helena Marwood as a trusted confidant who could move between aristocratic circles, charity boards, private dinners, and informal gatherings. The queen consort believed that network had protected her when official advisors could not. To William, however, Helena's access now looked like influence without accountability. Friendship was no longer the issue. The real danger was how far that friendship had reached into royal business. Camilla felt the cancellation as a personal humiliation. Alone in her sitting room, she asked an aide whether William now considered every person close to her a threat. The aide did not answer directly, and that silence deepened her anger. Yet beneath it sat a more painful fear. Perhaps the future king had discovered something about Helena that she herself had refused to see. Catherine remembered a brief exchange from weeks earlier. At a reception, Helena had mentioned that several royal patronages might soon lose support. A royal patronage is a formal link between a member of the family and a charity, often used to bring attention and credibility to its work. The princess had been unsettled because those changes were still restricted to a tiny planning group. Helena had no formal role, yet she knew details before several working royals had been informed. Camilla called her friend directly after the conference. Helena answered in a trembling voice and insisted she had been told she was expected there. The queen paused before asking, "Expected by whom?" No answer came. Helena remained silent, and Camilla understood that fear, not confusion, was controlling the conversation. William immediately ordered his staff to reconstruct every meeting Helena had attended during the previous 6 months. One event appeared again and again: a private dinner at Clarence House. That silence had not ended the crisis. It had led the palace straight toward the night, when one conversation crossed a line no one could later erase. The confrontation did not begin beneath television lights. It began 3 weeks earlier at a private dinner inside Clarence House, where the atmosphere appeared warm, polished, and harmless. William had arrived expecting a quiet family discussion about royal charities. Instead, he discovered that confidential proposals from his office had already been circulated among people with no official authority. Helena was there. Camilla was watching closely. And before the evening ended, one careless sentence revealed that the future king's private decisions were being discussed long before he announced them. William entered the dinner, believing he still controlled the terms of the conversation. Clarence House is the London residence traditionally used by senior members of the royal family, and that evening it had been chosen for what was presented as an informal gathering. Charles, Catherine, Camilla, and a small circle of trusted charity figures were present. The prince had brought a preliminary proposal calling for independent reviews of several royal charities before palace support was renewed. The plan mattered because those reviews could remove powerful trustees and expose years of unchecked influence. Helena changed the entire evening during dessert. Lady Helena Marwood looked directly at William and warned that removing 2 long-standing trustees would create enemies Camilla could not protect him from. The prince froze. Those names had appeared only in his confidential briefing, and the proposal had not been approved for wider circulation. Helena had no formal role, yet she knew exactly who was under review and why their positions were threatened. William asked who had shown her the document. Helena glanced toward Camilla before saying that people naturally discussed matters affecting their lives. The answer made his anger sharper. He pushed his chair back and accused the room of treating royal policy like private social property. The future king understood that if unofficial guests could see restricted plans, then his authority existed only on paper. Camilla defended her friend at once. The queen consort insisted Helena had been trying to prevent damage to charities that had served the crown for years. Catherine remained composed, but she watched her husband's trust collapse when his stepmother refused to admit that a boundary had been crossed. Charles tried to calm the exchange, yet even the king could not explain how Helena had learned those names. The danger deepened after dinner. William's staff discovered that one page from his preliminary briefing was missing. That page contained the exact details Helena had quoted. No accusation was made, but the silence around the missing sheet became its own confession. William confronted Camilla alone in a side corridor. He told her that private friendship could not interfere with the future of the crown. She replied that loyalty had kept her alive when official protection had failed. "Then loyalty has become your blind spot," he said, and walked away. 3 weeks later, Helena's forbidden presence proved that warning had been ignored. William was now ready to confront the person he believed had allowed it. Within an hour of the cancelled press conference, William entered a private meeting room where Camilla was already waiting. No cameras, no household staff, no carefully written statements. Helena sat between them, pale and visibly shaken. For the first time, the future king, the queen, and the woman at the center of the crisis faced one another without ceremony to soften the truth. William wanted one answer. Who had placed Helena in that room, and what had she expected to hear? William had ordered the meeting after security confirmed that Helena entered with temporary clearance, created less than 2 hours before the event. The authorization carried a code linked to Camilla's household, meaning the private office and staff responsible for supporting her official duties. That detail mattered because it suggested the breach had come from inside the royal system, not from an outsider forcing their way through it. Camilla arrived expecting an apology. The queen consort believed the cancellation had humiliated her in public and turned her friend into a threat without proof. That confidence disappeared when William placed the access record on the table. He asked whether she had approved the entry. She denied it immediately, then became defensive when the prince suggested someone under her authority had acted in her name. Helena finally broke. Lady Helena Marwood admitted through a message saved on her telephone that she had been instructed to attend because William's announcement would directly concern the Queen's position. She refused to identify the sender, insisting the person had promised that Camilla wanted her present. The explanation did not calm the room. It made the danger sharper. William leaned across the table. "Did you come to observe my announcement, or to stop it?" Helena looked toward Camilla for protection. The Queen did not move. After several painful seconds, her friend whispered, "I was told you were about to isolate her." Camilla's anger vanished. Betrayal replaced it. William then revealed the truth. His cancelled announcement contained no change to Camilla's constitutional position, meaning her formal place and recognized role within the monarchy. It did, however, propose removing informal advisors and unregistered intermediaries from royal decision-making. Helena had been sent there because someone expected her to hear the reforms early, react publicly, or pressure the Queen before the rules could take effect. Camilla demanded to see the message. Helena handed over the telephone with shaking hands. The sender's number was hidden, but one phrase appeared twice: "Protect the old arrangement." William recognized it at once. A senior palace official had used those exact words during a closed briefing only days earlier. The confrontation cleared Helena of one suspicion, but exposed something far more dangerous. Someone inside the palace had used Camilla's closest friendship as a weapon against William's authority. The monarchy now faced a threat more dangerous than an uninvited guest. Someone with access to private schedules, household codes, and confidential language had manipulated 3 senior figures at once. William had been provoked into canceling a national appearance. Helena had been placed where she was forbidden to be. Camilla's name had been used without her permission. As the prince examined the chain of authorization, he realized the crisis was not a social misunderstanding. It was a calculated test of who truly controlled the palace. William understood why the trap had worked. The monarchy operated through separate royal households, each with its own staff, security permissions, traditions, and personal loyalties. A royal household is the private office and support system serving a senior member of the family. That division allowed Charles to rule as sovereign, Camilla to maintain her own advisors, and the future king to build growing influence. It also created narrow gaps that an experienced courtier could exploit. William stood alone beside the abandoned press room and admitted to Catherine that he had reacted before seeing the full design. The prince feared the hidden organizer had already won by making him appear unstable before the nation. Catherine reminded him that recognizing the trap was not weakness, yet she also warned that anger would become dangerous if he allowed it to choose his next move. Camilla felt the same crisis from the opposite side. The queen consort now knew someone close to her office had used Helena as bait. That knowledge left her exposed and quietly ashamed. William had warned her that informal influence was crossing into official business, and she had dismissed his concern as suspicion. Now, one of her oldest friendships had been turned into a weapon because those boundaries had never been properly enforced. The access code finally led to Sir Malcolm Vale. Malcolm served as a senior coordinating secretary for both Charles and Camilla. His role allowed him to arrange meetings, move information between households, and manage sensitive access without attracting attention. He strongly opposed William's reforms because the new oversight plan would end his ability to connect royal friends, charity trustees, and palace decision-makers through unofficial channels. Malcolm had placed Helena at the conference to create panic. He expected her presence to provoke William, frighten Camilla, and delay the announcement before the restrictions could take effect. Charles read the authorization record twice. The king removed his glasses and placed them beside the file, while Camilla waited in silence. He pressed the bell for his equerry, an officer who assists the monarch with official duties, and said quietly, "Bring him to me now." The disappointment in his face frightened her more than anger. Before Malcolm entered, he sent Helena one final message. William intended to blame Camilla publicly. The hidden hand had been exposed, but the revelation did not calm the palace. It forced every person inside it to choose where loyalty truly belonged. By sunset, the cancelled conference had become a palace emergency. Sir Malcolm Vale was removed from active duty. Helena was escorted from royal property. William's announcement was suspended indefinitely. Camilla's household faced an internal investigation, and Charles was forced to confront the possibility that a trusted servant had manipulated his wife, his son, and the machinery of the crown. Yet the most painful consequence unfolded in private. When Camilla understood that preserving her friend's dignity might now require publicly distancing herself from Helena, Malcolm was ordered to surrender his palace identification, communication devices, and access credentials, while the king's private office reviewed his actions. That office is the small group responsible for handling the monarch's most sensitive decisions and records. The restriction mattered because one remaining message or unauthorized contact could deepen the crisis. William's reform speech was also rewritten to impose stronger controls over temporary passes, informal advisors, and household representatives attending official events. Helena felt abandoned when Camilla refused to stop her removal. At the palace entrance, Lady Helena Marwood turned to one of the Queen's aides and asked whether decades of friendship could truly be ended by a single manipulated invitation. The aide could offer no comfort. Her access had become a security risk, and personal loyalty could no longer erase that fact. Camilla received the question moments later and sat alone with it. The Queen Consort remembered the years when Helena had defended her through public hostility and private isolation. That history mattered because the friendship had once protected her emotionally when palace approval felt fragile. But now the same bond had become a path through which others could influence official decisions. The evidence grew darker. Malcolm's confiscated calendar showed several undocumented meetings between Helena and charity trustees, threatened by William's reforms. A draft memorandum from his office also outlined a plan to portray the prince as recklessly hostile to the Queen's circle if he moved against unofficial palace influence. The words proved that the conflict had been designed, not merely encouraged. Helena reached the waiting car and looked back. Camilla stood behind an upstairs window. Neither woman waved. The vehicle door closed, and the Queen remained motionless as the friend who had once defended her against the world was driven away under palace supervision. William wanted immediate action, but Catherine stopped him. The princess warned that humiliation would only complete Malcolm's plan by turning reform into family warfare. She proposed one private meeting between her husband and Camilla, with no Helena, no Charles, no advisors, and no staff. Discipline had begun moving through the palace. But Catherine understood that rules alone could not repair what had been broken. Only one honest conversation could stop the family from breaking completely. The turning point came without a council meeting, a legal memorandum, or a public declaration. Catherine arranged 2 chairs in a private room and asked William and Camilla to speak with no one else present. No aides waited beside the walls. No secretary recorded their words. For the first time since the crisis began, they were not the Prince of Wales and the Queen. They were 2 members of a fractured family, deciding whether suspicion would define their future or whether painful honesty could still save it. Catherine understood why Malcolm's plan had worked. He had used the emotional distance between William and Camilla, knowing each would assume the worst before asking for the truth. The princess warned her husband that reform without reconciliation might protect the institution while permanently damaging the family expected to represent it. William resisted at first, but he finally agreed because he knew public authority would mean little if private distrust remained untouched. Camilla spoke first. The Queen Consort admitted that Helena had been allowed too close to private royal discussions, because she had been one of the few people trusted before palace life became permanent. That friendship had once helped her survive years of isolation and hostility. Losing its protection now felt like losing part of herself. Yet she also accepted that private comfort had slowly become unofficial power, and that power had crossed a dangerous line. William answered with equal honesty. The prince confessed that cancelling the conference had not been driven by security alone. Helena's presence had reminded him of every private boundary he believed had been violated since the Clarence House dinner. His decision was protective, but it was also shaped by anger. The future king admitted that he had reacted before he understood who had truly arranged the trap. Camilla then revealed the detail that changed the meeting. Through a documented account prepared for Charles, she confirmed that she had warned Malcolm not to interfere with William's announcement. He ignored her because conflict protected his influence. The secretary believed division between the 2 households would preserve the old system he controlled. William gave her a clear choice. She could publicly support the new access rules and retain a respected role in future royal initiatives, or resist them and lose involvement in the restructured charity network. Silence followed. Camilla removed a personal access card Helena had once used for private visits and placed it in William's hand. "This ends today," she said. He closed his fingers around it. "Not your friendship, only its power inside the palace." For the first time, the Queen nodded without resistance. She accepted the reforms on one condition: Helena's name would not be destroyed for Malcolm's scheme. That agreement changed the crisis, but the public still saw only an abandoned podium. Now the monarchy had to explain the truth without reopening the wounds it had just begun to close. By the following morning, one image had come to represent the entire crisis: an illuminated podium standing empty beneath the Prince of Wales's crest, while journalists stared toward a closed palace door. Newspapers treated the cancellation as a battle for control. Broadcasters questioned whether William had challenged Camilla's influence. Crowds gathered outside Kensington Palace, expecting another announcement. Yet behind the spectacle, a carefully negotiated statement was being prepared, one that would expose misconduct without turning a private betrayal into a royal civil war. The palace confirmed that an unauthorized guest had entered a restricted official event, and that a senior staff member had been suspended after an internal security review. That review meant a formal examination of how access rules had failed and who had approved the breach. William's office also announced that the charity reforms would proceed within 48 hours. The cancellation had delayed the policy, but it had not defeated it. Public opinion split almost immediately. Some commentators praised William for protecting confidential royal business before it could be manipulated. Others argued that walking away from the podium had allowed private anger to overpower public duty. The prince understood the criticism. He had protected the announcement, but he had also left the country staring at an empty space where leadership should have stood. Camilla faced an even harsher storm once Helena's identity became public. The Queen Consort saw headlines linking her private circle to secret influence and palace interference. The accusations wounded her, Yet she refused to contradict William or blame him for the cancellation. She knew one defensive sentence could reopen the division Malcolm had worked so hard to create. The London Chronicle captured the national mood with a single front page. Beneath a photograph of the empty podium appeared the words, "The speech that never began." Outside Kensington Palace, a crowd fell silent as the same image appeared on a broadcaster's outdoor screen. In that moment, the abandoned lectern became more than a symbol of delay. It became proof that something deep inside the monarchy had shifted. The joint palace statement then changed the story. Through a recorded announcement released by both households, Camilla personally endorsed the new restrictions on unofficial access. Her support destroyed Malcolm's attempt to portray the reforms as William's attack against her. Charles sat beside her as Helena's photograph appeared on television. The king placed his hand over hers. Camilla did not look away. Grief remained in her expression, but so did certainty. Protecting the crown now meant accepting that the old arrangement had ended. William then announced that he would return to the same podium the next morning. This time, he would deliver the speech and address the breach directly with Camilla, seated in the front row. The empty podium had symbolized division. His return would decide whether the crisis ended in humiliation or became an act of royal renewal. 24 hours after abandoning the press conference, Prince William returned to the same room and stood behind the same podium. This time, every seat had been checked, every access code verified, and every person present officially approved. Queen Camilla sat in the front row beside King Charles. Catherine watched from only a few feet away. William unfolded his speech, looked directly toward the cameras, and delivered more than a policy announcement. He delivered a final verdict on loyalty, authority, and the future character of the crown. William announced the creation of a transparent royal access framework, requiring every advisor, charity representative, personal friend, and temporary guest to be formally registered before entering restricted official events. The framework meant a clear system for recording who entered, who approved them, and why they were present. That mattered because private influence could no longer hide behind friendship, tradition, or personal loyalty. The prince then confirmed that Sir Malcolm Vale had been permanently removed from royal service. He had abused household authority, misused security access, and deliberately tried to provoke conflict between senior members of the family. Malcolm's informal network was dismantled completely, ending the quiet system that had allowed unofficial figures to move too close to royal decisions. William did not name Helena as a conspirator. Instead, he described Lady Helena Marwood as a private individual who had been manipulated through false information. The future king honored Camilla's request, but he made one boundary unmistakably clear. Helena's unofficial palace access had ended. Camilla listened without interrupting. When William acknowledged her cooperation, the queen consort held his gaze and gave a small nod. That gesture carried more weight than any prepared statement. Their struggle had not ended through victory or defeat. It had ended because both accepted that private loyalty needed limits when the crown was involved. Charles had already approved the reforms before the speech began. The king's authorization gave William full power to enforce the new rules across every major royal household. He was no longer asking the palace to change. He had been trusted to make it change. Helena withdrew from all royal charity boards and returned to private life. Camilla maintained personal contact with her, but never again allowed that friendship to enter official royal affairs. Malcolm's influence disappeared with his position, and the old arrangement ended for good. William folded the speech and stepped away from the podium. Camilla rose first. For one suspended second, the room expected her to leave. Instead, she approached him and extended her hand. He accepted it. Charles exhaled, and Catherine's expression softened. The podium that had stood empty in fear was no longer a symbol of division. It became the place where William established his authority. Camilla accepted the limits of influence, and the monarchy proved that loyalty could survive only when it answered to truth. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.